picture your family tree again. Same beetle-eating caveman, same chain of horny survivors. But this time, zoom in on the last 2,000 years. Somewhere along that line, one of your ancestors looked at a total bastard who robbed, murdered, and terrorized everyone around him, and instead of running away screaming, they dropped to their knees and called him divine. Congratulations, you come from a long line of people with the worst possible taste in celebrities. Today we're ranking 5 cities that straight up worshipped career criminals as actual gods. Not misunderstood rebels, not Robin Hood types. Real deal scumbags who would mug you in an alley and then demand you thank them for the spiritual experience. From Bronze Age pirates to Renaissance serial killers, these are the places that looked evil in the face and said, you know what, 5 stars would pray again. Let's start with number 5. Number 5, Panticapaeum and the Pirate Kings of the Black Sea. Around 300 BC, the Greek colonies around the Crimea decided democracy was overrated and handed absolute power to a family actually named the Spartans, which sounds cool until you find out they got rich. The old-fashioned way, hijacking every merchant ship that tried to feed the Greek world. These guys weren't privateers with a government license. They were straight pirates who happened to live in a palace. They robbed grain ships heading to Athens so often that half the city literally starved 1 year, and Athens still sent diplomats begging for peace treaties. The Spartans took the bribes, signed the parchment, then robbed the diplomats on the way home. Normal Tuesday. Yet inside Panticapaeum, they built temples to themselves. Not metaphorically, literal marble temples with statues of Spartacus I, Leucon I, Pericles II, all posed like Zeus, thunderbolt in one hand, stolen cargo manifest in the other. Citizens had to sacrifice bulls on their birthdays or get thrown off the cliffs into the sea they'd spent their lives looting. The priests claimed the pirate kings were beloved by Poseidon because every time someone tried to rebel, a convenient storm sank the rebel fleet. Funny how that works when you control all the ships. The family ran the scam for 300 years until the neighbors finally got fed up and called in the Romans, who showed up, took one look at the golden statues of professional shipjackers and said, yeah, this tracks for Greeks. Number 4. Rome and the cult of Emperor Nero. Yes, that Nero. The guy who kicked his pregnant wife to death, who had his own mother murdered because she nagged him, who turned Rome into his personal cosplay murder playground. Rome had seen bad emperors before. Caligula made his horse a senator, but Nero managed to be so hated that after he committed suicide, the entire city threw a week-long party. They danced in the streets, wore liberty camps, handed out cakes that literally said good riddance and icing. Except one city refused to celebrate. Except one city built him temples anyway. Except one city kept worshipping him as a living god for the next 300 years. That city was Parthian Ctesiphon, modern-day Iraq, bitter enemies of Rome. The Parthians hated Rome so much that when news arrived Nero was dead, they assumed it was enemy propaganda and waited for him to ride in with an army of avenging fire demons. When he never showed, they decided he'd actually ascended into heaven and would return any day now to burn Rome to the ground a second time. They minted coins with his face glowing like the sun. They built shrines where priests sang hymns about the divine arsonist who would come back and finish the job. Every few decades, a random red-headed con man would show up claiming to be Nero resurrected. The Parthians would crown him emperor on the spot and marching toward Rome until the Romans murdered him and mailed the head back in a box. Happened at least 3 times. The cult only died when Christianity finally took over, and even then, old grandmas still whispered that the kindest emperor who ever lived would return when the world needed him most. Stockholm Syndrome across 4 centuries. Number 3. Delhi and the Thuggee cult of Kali. For about 600 years, from roughly 1200 to 1800, large parts of India had a job opening listed as professional serial killer. Benefits include eternal paradise, job security literally guaranteed by goddess. The thugs were organized gangs, sometimes hundreds strong, who befriended travelers on the roads, marched with them for days, shared meals, told jokes, gained their trust, then at a prearranged signal strangled every single man, woman, and child with a silk scarf because steel would anger Kali. They buried the bodies, kept the cash and goods, and sent a percentage up the chain to their guru who told them how many murders the goddess required that season. British records eventually claimed 13,000 murders a year at peak, possibly 40,000 total across centuries, maybe 2 million if you believe the highest Indian estimates. Either way, a lot. And the terrifying part, Entire cities knew. The thugs were in hiding in forests, they lived in normal towns, owned farmland, sent their kids to school. Local rajas took protection money to look the other way. Some princes literally employed thugs as tax collectors, go collect the road tax, keep whatever you find in their pockets. Temples to Kali all over northern India received donations of gold bangles still attached to severed hands because the goddess liked shiny things. The British officer William Sleeman finally destroyed the cult in the 1830s by going door to door with a snitch list longer than a CVS receipt, hanged about 4,000 of them, and the cities threw parades for the executioners. Took 600 years for someone to finally say, maybe strangling random pilgrims isn't great spirituality. Number 2, Mexico City. Well, Tenochtitlan back then, and the worship of Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec war god who was less deity more cosmic, extortion racket. Every single year, the Aztecs needed to rip out 20,000 living human hearts, or the sun would not rise the next day. That was the sales pitch, and the entire valley bought it wholesale. The priests weren't even sneaky about the con. They marched the victims up the pyramid steps in full view of a crowd the size of modern Coachella, sliced them open with an obsidian knife, held the still-beating heart up to the sun like a bartender offering a toast, then kicked the body down the stairs so the next customer could take their place. Sometimes they kept the skin and wore it to the after-party. The craziest part, the victims were often enemy warriors who had already lost in ritual battles called flower wars, staged specifically to harvest prisoners. They knew exactly what was coming, walked into the city surrounded by cheering crowds like death row rock stars, spent their last night eating feasts and sleeping with temple prostitutes because, hey, might as well. The Aztecs were so proud of the system, they built an entire district of skull racks. 70,000 bleached human skulls stacked like the world's worst Home Depot. And the city of 500,000 people looked at that wall every morning and said, truly, the gods are pleased. Spanish showed up in 1519, took one look, and decided, yeah, we're burning this whole religion to the ground, thanks. Modern Mexico City is literally built on top of the lake bed where those hearts used to drip, and the #1 city that worshipped the worst criminal as the holiest of holies, Cartagena de Indias, Colombia, 1600s, and their patron saint, Pedro Claver, actually the city that turned a slave-trading mass murderer into the literal reincarnation of Jesus Christ. Meet Diego de Mico, real name Diego de Almagro the Younger, Spanish conquistador, professional war criminal, and for one shining decade the living god king of the entire Pacific coast of South America. Quick backstory, his dad, the original Diego de Almagro, helped Pizarro murder the Inca emperor Atahualpa by strangling him with a garrote after promising him mercy, classic move. That got too ambitious, Pizarro had him beheaded, so baby Diego grew up with daddy issues the size of the Andes. Fast forward to 1540, Diego Jr. raises an army, murders his way across Peru, slaughters entire indigenous towns for fun, sells the survivors into slavery, and crowns himself emperor of a breakaway kingdom. The Spanish crown sends an army to stop him. He loses one battle, and instead of surrendering, he lines up 400 innocent indigenous allies and executes them all so they can't testify against him. Real Prince of Peace energy. The city of Cartagena, brand new Spanish port, looks at this walking genocide and says, you know who would make a fantastic messiah, this guy. Why? Because he was losing to the royal army and needed a safe harbor to hide his stolen gold. Cartagena let him dock, threw him a parade, and the local bishop declared him the new Christ sent to punish the evils of the crown. Churches rang bells for a week. Women fainted when he rode past on a horse draped in Inca gold. He lived in a palace, slept with half the noble daughters, and used the city treasury to hire more mercenaries. When the royal army finally arrived, the citizens fought street to street to protect their divine serial killer. Took a full siege and hundreds dead before they dragged Diego out, beheaded him in the town square, and stuck his hat on a pike. The city mourned for months, smuggled his body parts out at night, and secretly buried them under the main cathedral altar, where some people swear they still pray to St. Diego the Martyr to this very day. So there you go, 5 cities that looked at the worst humans their century could produce, and said yes, please, make him our god.